drinking water. Spectrum News 13's Greg Pallone. He is live for us in Titusville. Greg, I know the suit is directed at 3M Company as well as DuPont. Tell us more.
Yeah, Tammy, these companies aren't accused of putting these dangerous chemicals known as forever chemicals directly into the groundwater, but rather for their role in using the chemicals in products which would end up there. And now one Titusville resident, her quest to hold them responsible is finally coming to fruition.
We tested that water fountain and it came back detected PFAS.
Stell Bailey is the executive director of Fight for Zero, an organization pushing for a healthy community. She's a cancer survivor whose focus now is water that is safe to drink.
Changed my perspective on health and prevention and how to prevent these diseases. And one way to do that is clean drinking water.
Stell and her team began testing the city's drinking water for signs of PFAS contamination, known as a forever chemical found in the groundwater throughout the Space Coast. PFAS doesn't break down and is found in firefighting foam and aerospace manufacturing. If someone drinks the contaminated water for a long period of time, it can cause health issues like cancer.
When I first started addressing this, I think a lot of the cities were like, what is this stuff? They were like, it was the unknown and it was scary and it was frightening, but Titusville has done a 360 and they've decided to do the right thing, to step up.
On new business item 12A, which is the proposed class action settlement.
This week, Titusville City Council voted to join a class action settlement against the 3M Company and DuPont, claiming these companies played a key role in the groundwater contamination. The city is eligible to get on board, but will be required to test their 48 wells throughout town.
PFAS isn't something that's put in the water by these companies, but what it was, it's in your cooking utensils, the coating on your pan, it's in your waterproofing of your rain jacket. For firefighting side, it's in firefighting foam, which is where a lot of this started, was in the firefighting foam used on airfields.
From there, the chemicals go to the landfill, then seep into the water table. Cost to test all the wells over the next 2 years will be more than $30,000, which the city is hoping to recoup through the lawsuit. Stell is happy the responsibility to pay will be on the companies.
The taxpayers, the city, the utilities should not have to have the burden of cost of fixing this problem.
The city is hoping to do that testing within 2 years, but get that done a lot sooner, perhaps even a year or so. This lawsuit has gotten preliminary approval from the United States District Court for the District of South Carolina. Live in Titusville, Greg Pallone, Spectrum News 13.
On the news because her quest to bring awareness to PFAS contamination in Brevard County has been successful, and she's finally getting some traction with getting the city of Titusville to sign on to that lawsuit. She was at the city council meeting this week and spoke and was well received, and it was wonderful to hear the comments from the mayor. And Stell, can you just talk a little bit about that experience and what it felt like in that moment, having gone through this process for so many years, to have those results come out and to see now the results of that study and how it's going to get relief for the city, for the county, for anyone that wants to sign on to that lawsuit to clean up their environment.
In the moment, I was speechless. I actually wasn't anticipating getting emotional, but I sat there and I started getting emotional, even hearing all of it. It's been an interesting week because our family has been through, as you know, a lot. I mean, we've gone through personal attacks. So much was done to try to deter us and take us off track. And, to get to this moment, and to see that a city finally, they did the right thing. And I wanted to really emphasize at that meeting, these city council members, they didn't put this chemical in the water. I think everyone's attention should be to the chemical companies and policy even, because we've allowed this to happen repeatedly. This isn't the first incident. This just happens to be one of the worst chemicals out there because it's a forever chemical. It doesn't break down. It builds up in your body. It causes havoc in health issues. But we have other issues on top of that with chemicals. Like if you look back at Radium Girls and what happened with them, and they put radium in toothpaste and cosmetics, very similar to what they've done with PFAS. They've put that in everything. And so I think this is there's a deep rooted issue with this on a federal level. I think that our state legislators could be doing a lot more. And so to sit there and hear them, they're acknowledging there's a problem. And you wouldn't be able to sign on to a lawsuit unless you were acknowledging that. And I was just so grateful. It's been a long time coming. It wasn't just my family that received attacks. My volunteers became targets. And I just want to say to them, thank you. They've had to move, some of them, because of this, because of how badly they've been harassed. But yet you all have still sat by my side and never wavered. And to that, I am so grateful, because it's been a lot to go through. And gosh, I wouldn't wish this calling on anyone. It's not an easy one, but I do want to show that clip for those that weren't at the meeting, if that's okay, just so that they can kind of get an overview of the actual city council meeting. Let me go ahead and do that. I'll share my screen. Okay.
I also want to point out tonight that the city didn't put PFAS in the water. It's usually a misconception. When people hear about contamination, they get fearful. You guys didn't do this. And I felt that I really needed to put that on the record. It's about how you handle it that matters. And I'm for this because the taxpayers, the utilities, the cities should not have to carry the burden of cost on any of this. It should be the manufacturers of the chemicals. They knew since the 70s that this stuff was harming the environment. It was harming human health, and they continued to allow it to be used, knowing that.
I agree. They knew about it. They didn't stop it. And so I think that we need to join the proposed class action settlement.
I would agree. And hearing from Stell, I'm assuming you agree that we should move forward with joining this lawsuit.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I have a motion from Member Nelson, a second from Member Cole. Roll call vote.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Robinson?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Cole?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Hold on, you're muted.
While it's not getting everything that we want, that was a monumental moment. I was applauding at home when I was watching it on YouTube, because for so long the water resources director would not admit, concede to anything that we were showing him, that we were presenting to the city of Titusville, whether it was test results, whether it was scientific data, whether it was technology that could possibly solve some of their problems. It's because of the personal conflict. And it's so refreshing. I don't even know. I think they may have just eliminated that role. He destroyed that role so badly as water resources director that I think the city of Titusville is steering clear of that position because of that. And it's so refreshing to have Kevin Cook, who we just heard say, yes, we should join on that lawsuit. It was so refreshing to hear him say yes, because it's the right thing to do, and to have somebody in charge of water quality in the city of Titusville who is receptive to the data, who's receptive to the test results, who's doing testing, who now will take on the burden of managing and orchestrating this testing and doing the reporting for this lawsuit. That's a huge burden. And it's so refreshing to have somebody want to work on water quality in the city of Titusville, that's employed at the city of Titusville, when for so long we were cursed with someone who ignored water quality, refused to address water quality. And I think this is a pivotal moment indeed.
Absolutely it is. And I think it's going to trickle down, and it's setting a standard for other cities and the county. As we know, MIMS is detecting this in their drinking water. And so I have reached out to our commissioner and brought forward, hey, we got to do something about this. So they're currently looking into it. And I'm just hoping, this was like the end goal for us was to get action on this. And again, in our last stream, Rebecca brought up how like PFAS is everywhere, but this is our own community. This is our own backyard. And that's no excuse. It doesn't make it okay to be drinking it. As I said, it builds up in your body. And the most susceptible to this contamination are children. So when we talk about protecting our children, this should be the top priority, a top part of your discussion, because your children, look at them and look at how much they drink. And it doesn't take nearly as much as it does for an adult for them to be impacted. And again, cancer takes 15 to 20 years, environmentally caused ones, to show up. So your child may not show any signs now, but imagine them at the age of 15 developing a brain tumor. Imagine them. You don't want to imagine them, but imagine them in their early 20s, like my brother and I, being told you are diagnosed with cancer. You had to go through open heart surgery to remove all of these tumors. No parent wants that for their child. And that's why this should be so important to our community, and why people should be on board with fighting for this. We've got a comment coming through that says, once they realized it was an issue, they agreed to take action relatively fast for a government agency. Others have known for years and still are not taking action for residents, only to protect themselves. And I think they are speaking of the city of Satellite Beach. They were just at the delegation meeting this past week, and they brought forward, we are asking the legislators to protect us from any liability with this PFAS stuff. I was kind of taken back by that, honestly, Libby. I thought, what liability are you talking about? For the past 5 years, you have been telling everyone the water is safe. You've been telling them there's nothing wrong, that it's just in the groundwater and that people don't drink the groundwater. So what are you so scared of? What is the liability on the city?
The liability, in my opinion, is that they denied and exposure happened, and people are sick and people want to make a recovery. So the moment that they become aware through testing that they have these high levels, the clock starts ticking. They have a duty to protect. They have a duty to warn, as the Department of Health has a duty to warn. These are statutory duties. Breaching these duties exposes you to liability. I mean, that's not rocket science, but a lot of people don't understand that that's what they're looking at. They're not looking at, it's amazing to me that they're not saying, let's get on this class action and let's talk about another class action for the victims in our community who now are suffering from health ramifications and diseases and cancer, who have been exposed. That should be the direction.
Yeah, it should be. And it's interesting you bring that up, because I almost wondered if that was a knee-jerk reaction from them, because we know that all of these cities and officials and people are monitoring our websites, they're monitoring our social media, and they probably saw the conversation come up, because we do have attorneys that are interested in a toxic tort lawsuit here in Brevard County and helping the families that have been impacted by this with personal injury. I don't know much more.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
I don't know much more beyond that, but I do know that we want to bring them in. We want them to have that conversation with the community. I want to provide that as a resource for the community. It's just interesting to me that they are so worried that they're like begging our state lawmakers, protect us from liability. To me, that's scary. And I will be pushing back on that in Tallahassee. I don't know if I'll be
Same.
successful, but I will be letting them know about how our military family, by the way, my husband was still serving when they told us they locked us out of that meeting in Satellite Beach. He was still in the military, active military. So the way that they've treated our military family throughout this whole entire thing, when it was the DOD that poisoned our waterways with this AFFF, DOD knew too. They knew too. It'd be different if they didn't know, but they knew since the 70s too. There are documents out there that show that the Department of Defense knew, and they continued to carry on as usual. These companies made billions of dollars while people got sick, while they impacted human health, and they impacted our service members and the people that he served with and their families. And that's who I've been going to Washington, D.C. with. I've been standing alongside them. Firefighters, they're directly in the firefighting foam. In Cape Canaveral, they used to spray the stuff in big piles and let all the kids play in it. These companies knew it was dangerous when they were doing that. The firefighters didn't know. They were just spraying it around, having a good time.
Right. But what happens is the liability that they have, the manufacturers of these chemicals, then extends to those agencies that allowed those chemicals to be used once they became aware or should have become aware. And we know when they became aware because we told them, right? Not we as in me, but many advocates have been, including yourself, have been ringing the alarm, sounding the alarm on this for quite some time. From the very first moment in public records that we see a PFAS test result, that's the moment that anybody that gets sick after that can go back and sue anybody who is responsible for allowing those contaminants to get into the water. And that includes government agencies, cities, counties, state agencies.
Oh, that's a great segment into something else we wanted to discuss tonight, state agencies and stuff, and regarding sewage and E. coli. And one of the most frustrating things is, I guess you had a call with, what was it?
Cynthia Leckie with the Department of Health. She is the environmental, she's the environmental director, let's just say that, for the Department of Health in Brevard County. And her statements to me, in essence, were that it is not the Department of Health's duty or responsibility to protect public health. That's summing it up. It was a back and forth with her for sure. Interesting, that video has gotten over 10,000 views on TikTok, and most of them are from residents in the Brevard County area, and they're not happy. So I went so far as to get the statute and look at it, because I thought, am I wrong? I was a medical malpractice paralegal for many years, so I know a little bit about healthcare and a little bit about advocacy, because a lot of our clients were victims. And so I had that in my background. So I knew that wasn't making sense with what I understood the Department of Health's duties were. I also work for a regulatory firm, and I understand regulatory agencies and what their duties and jurisdictions are. And I also know that some of them are overlapping. And in DEP and DOH's case, they are overlapping their duties. They both have a duty to warn and protect, okay? But the Department of Health has a priority to protect public health, and it is defined by statute. So when you read that statute, the lady who said it is the Department of Environmental Protection's responsibility to protect public health in the city of Titusville, she was wrong or she was lying. I don't know which it was. She said she got direction from the state bureau and from the county health system. And for me, that means somebody told her, do not respond to E. coli and fecal coliform issues within the city of Titusville. And she was directed to ignore and not respond to anything. So from the first moment that I've been reporting to her this year to now, no matter what came through, no matter how alarming it was, ignore.
I was going to ask, have you
Ignore.
talked to her previously? That's interesting.
Absolutely. And we've had a difficult time communicating. She's always been very abrasive.
She sounded a little I was listening to it and she sounded like a little annoyed. Like,
she's annoyed with me because I hold her to the fire and she can't use word salad, to use your word with me. And she tries, but she can't do it. I get frustrated with her and I've let some time go to talk to her because I knew that she was hitting the ignore button, but I didn't know why until this phone call when she said she got direction from the State Bureau. It's interesting now that I have to speak with their media specialist because they're concerned of the media spin, is what they're calling it. It's not a spin. She spoke for herself. Nobody's spinning this. The media spin that is on this now, everything that has to be communicated has to go through their media executive. And the reason is because she just caused a media nightmare for the Department of Health.
and they don't need any more of that because they just got through a lawsuit. They went through the whole, what was it, Rebecca Jones situation where it was the data scientist on, I don't know the full story on that. I just know that her house
The
got
COVID
raided.
data. And
yeah,
she had a lot of data that proved that some of those numbers, the statistic numbers that were being collected, were skewed and maybe manipulated to support political agendas.
Well, that's interesting. So you were trying to just get a warning out because there's high E. coli levels, and it seems like nobody really wants to take responsibility for that. And the way she's, from what I heard correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, she said that the Indian River Lagoon isn't a healthy beach. I think I remember hearing something like that in your conversation.
She said she only regulates healthy beaches, and we're talking about a lagoon and not a beach. And I said, no, we're talking about the residents in the city of Titusville. Who is responsible for protecting public health in the city of Titusville? Because again, she's trying to make this more confusing than it needs to be. It's not confusing at all. We're talking about residents that live in the city of Titusville, not the people swimming in the river. We're talking about the residents that live within the city of Titusville. And she specifically said the Department of Environmental Protection is the only agency responsible for protecting the residents' health in the city of Titusville.
Which like, it doesn't make sense because they're an environmental protection agency. They're the Department of Health. So it's like, how are you, and this has been my experience whenever I have to call around to the agencies initially, like, I have to deal with them passing the buck. That's what I call it, where they're like, that's not our responsibility. That's the Indian River Lagoon people. Then I call them. They're like, that's not my responsibility. That's so-and-so. So then when you keep going around in the circle, eventually they all start throwing each other under the bus. You'll notice they'll start,
And that's exactly what's happening right now. So I can tell you one thing. My contacts at DEP are not happy with Cynthia Leckie. They said she's wrong, absolutely wrong. And in fact, it was my contact at DEP said, have you looked at the statute? And it was like a heated one after another and me quickly researching. And then when I read it, can you pull that statute up? Do you have it?
I don't.
Okay. Well, anyway, I sent it to you in a text. Anyway, basically, maybe I can pull it up and just read it from my screen here. Let me just get this.
Yeah.
It'll take me 1 second.
Well, while you do that, I've got some comments coming through on different platforms. Hold on.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Waters of the U.S. are now meant to be polluted. EPA and FDEP off the hook. Yeah, it feels like that, doesn't it? It's especially when they do this whole passing the buck situation. It's like nobody wants to be responsible for it. Nobody wants to answer for it. It's like, well, what is the point of having these agencies? Ooh, and I want to point out while we're talking about this, our tax-paying dollars, we pay for these agencies. Like, they work for us. Same thing with grants. Same thing with state appropriations. All of that is tax-paying money. So I don't know why anyone that resides in the state of Florida is okay with this. Is that how you like your money being spent on an agency, is now pushing you to a media advisor who doesn't, they don't want to answer on behalf of the public health concerns? I mean, I'm just putting that out there. I think it's pretty ludicrous. And I know a lot of people feel the same way about the EPA and these other agencies. So did you get the
So
statute?
I just pulled up the statute, and it's Florida Statute 20.43, and it's the organizational structure for the executive branch of the Department of Health. And it specifically reads, and I'm not going to read a whole bunch of this because you don't have to. Paragraph 1 says it all. Paragraph 1, the purpose of the Department of Health is to protect and promote the health of all residents and visitors in the state through organized state and community efforts, including cooperative agreement with counties. The department shall identify, diagnose, and conduct surveillance of diseases and health conditions in the state and accumulate the health statistics necessary to establish trends, implement interventions that prevent or limit the impact or spread of diseases and health conditions, collect, manage, and analyze vital statistics and other health data to inform the public and formulate public health policy and planning. Hello, maintain and coordinate preparedness for and responses to public health emergencies in the state, provide or ensure the provision of quality health care and related services to identified populations in the state, regulate environmental activities that have a direct impact on public health in the state. My God, if that doesn't say it all.
Right.
Regulate health practitioners for the preservation of the health, safety, and welfare of the public. That's paragraph 1, and it goes on. It gets
Right.
even broader. I mean, when you get into each of the divisions, the Division of Administration, of Emergency Preparedness, of Control and Health Protection, each of those agencies has a laundry list of duties. So, sorry, Cynthia Leckie, you're wrong. Department of Health, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, this definitely shouldn't be the responsibility or pushed on the city of Titusville or any city at that fact, because they're dealing with, they specialize in different areas. They don't specialize in health. They don't have an epidemiologist and people that should be educated on these environmental impacts. I mean, it doesn't make sense to make that the responsibility of a water utility director or, even a regular crew staff worker that's out there mowing the grass. Like, they don't know, that's not in their specialties, right?
Somewhere along the line, we flipped the script. It used to be that all of these agencies worked in tandem and overlapped each other for added protection. Now it's, this agency is only responsible for this and no one else is touching the issue, even though they may all share in the same duties. So they say, no, they have jurisdiction. Well, they may have jurisdiction for certain things like investigating, penalizing, those types of things, fact finding, those types of things. But they all have the responsibilities and the duties defined by statute, and they do overlap. And at the point where we stopped doing it that way, that's when the safety net went away, because now there's all these holes that things are falling through. This agency doesn't know what this agency's doing. They think they do, and then they point the finger at each other and no one's being protected.
Well, I think that needs to be addressed. It's not good for our state, and with everything that's happening with our water quality and the health implications of that. And it's not, and I know it doesn't just happen in Brevard County or Titusville. I know that we constantly get messaged about things happening on the West Coast, whether it's red tide or in the middle of the state or near Lake Okeechobee. They've got their own, but think about how many advocates across the state are dealing with these similar situations, and you just happened to highlight that conversation. It's interesting.
It needed to happen. It's been something that's been going on across the state, and you're right. And it's something that when I had my toxic exposure to cyanobacteria and I was trying to get those signs up in Volusia County, that I had the same runaround with the Volusia County Department of Health. I spoke with the state director for their algae blooms. I can't remember his name. It's so far back. But that's when I realized the Department of Health is run by political policy, and it's not nonpartisan, unfortunately, and it should be. It's controlled by whoever's in power, and it's sad because when I was going through the problem in Volusia County, the Department of Health person that I spoke with there told me that the reason they couldn't put a sign up is because my city government didn't want one up. And I said, well, she said, we can't force them to do it. We can only recommend. I said, well, then you need to recommend it. It's not that, it's not what the constituents want. So I said, well, I'm a constituent. And then there was like crickets. And then it dawned on me, I'm not the right kind of constituent. And I said that. And she said, well, maybe you're not.
That speaks volumes. Let's get into like some updates with Titusville. Do we want to start with Scobie Park?
Yeah, let's talk about what they did right and what they did wrong.
Okay. Well, let's start with Scobie Park looked like this over the summer. Oh, why did it go behind it? Not sure why that was. Let me see here. Well, I guess I have to put us to the side maybe.
You want me to turn my camera off for a minute?
Maybe.
Here, let me turn my camera off for a minute. Oh, that doesn't
didn't
help.
work. Okay, well, that's new.
Well, it was working a minute ago.
Well, it used to look like that. And then there was a suggestion to no-mo. So it looks a lot more.
You can see a little bit of it behind our images.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that for now, and then we'll figure it out later. Then, so this was by accident, by the way. I was out doing a news interview, and I was like, oh, there was a bunch of cones out, and there was a lot of like traffic because they were doing work. And so I was like, let me just take the back way, back out of town. And, as I'm driving by Scobie Park, I look over and I see all of this just mowed down grass and like thrown in the water. And I had to stop because I was speechless. Like, we literally just got done on Tuesday night commending the city, saying, you guys, the water looks so much better. There's life in it. We see these like lots of fish in the area, and the water's even looking better. And then this happens. And I was just, I think you could clearly hear it. There's a live video on our Fight for Zero Brevard group. And I went live because, and you can hear me in real life, like gasp when I walk over to where all the grass is directly in the water.
Exasperated.
It was like contrary to what the Indian River Lagoon half syntax had been telling us for so long. Is like, don't put your grass clippings, in the water. Don't, try to clean them up. And like, here we are. And I'm like, why did this happen? And so there was a pretty immediate response.
Let's talk about that for just a second, because you need to back up, because some people don't know what Scobie Park is. Scobie Park's the park in Titusville where we first became aware of the high fecal coliform and E. coli levels, right? And at that time, the river along that lagoon and that little slough there were disgusting. It was a really bad algae bloom, and there was a stench of sewage. And again, like I said, the high E. coli and fecal coliform levels. Elizabeth Baker, Stell Bailey, they went to the city. They talked to them about not mowing that area. The city listened. We praised them because we saw Stell, others went down, took some video. The life had come back along that no-mow area, and the water quality even looked to improve. The water looked so much clearer. It didn't have the fog and the film on it that it normally does. So it was working. The pollinators were back. The wildflowers were blooming. It was perfect. But then what happened was somebody from the city went down and mowed. They apparently did not know, according to Kevin Cook, or hadn't realized that was taken off the mow list. So he took responsibility for that, which again speaks volumes for his leadership. He said it's his responsibility to make sure that they know that, and he took full responsibility. He said he feels that they won't make that mistake again, but he feels that they just really need to hammer it with their employees so that they're constantly reminding them, do not mow this area. But he also talked about replanting that area with some UF native wildflowers that will work in that shoreline area and possibly overtake some of that grass area. So we'll have more pollinators also. And we talked about putting some signs there, and I don't know what that would look like, some bee friendly signs, or I'm just being generic at this point, be Florida native, or maybe just something that says the city of Titusville supports nature. I don't know, but some signage there, because humans do make mistakes. And if a new employee maybe doesn't get the story right or doesn't understand his instructions properly, goes down to mow that area and sees the sign, it will give them pause and they might question the decision to mow that area. So he did like that idea, and we'll look into that, which made me feel really good about that. He felt terrible when he got confirmation that that had happened after all the calls were pouring in. And I know council members got those calls too, and were looking for answers. He was just beside himself. So I know that this was an accident. I do believe it will give us an opportunity to prevent it from happening in the future. And I am grateful that he's going to replant that area with some native plants that will work a little bit better than the grass.
I agree. And then as I was driving yesterday, I also noticed that there was a lot of work being done in the area. And they're out there, diligently working. I don't even know how they're doing it. They're working on so many different areas. I'll pull up the map to kind of show you. Sandpoint Park, they're repairing something. Then they're behind Burger King repairing something. Then they're at Spaceview Park. They're also on Garden Street. So there's the map. I kind of just put some red stars on the map to show you where they were working yesterday. It's basically infrastructure, right? But we're
stormwater infrastructure, the force main projects that they're replacing, all of this infrastructure has to get replaced. It must. That's the problem in the city of Titusville, is their dilapidated infrastructure. So we know that this is a priority. The fear is that it is just so broken down that we might see another huge spill. We hope that doesn't happen. And so far, Kevin Cook assures us there haven't been any major complications. He said at Sandpoint Park, they had a 15-foot drill down. So they're obviously in some very wet, sandy soil, and it's a little harder to control the drill at that point. So it took a little longer. So that was his only real complaint of the project, is that it's taking longer than he wants it to, obviously. And they did.
Oops. She'll have to jump back on. In the meantime, I can show you guys. I'll do live videos, and sometimes I do just pre-recorded videos. And a big part of our advocacy is documenting. And that's what we did with the 7.2 million gallon sewage spill a few years back that happened in the city of Titusville. It's just a good way to have everything documented through video footage, through photo footage. And so I was doing that yesterday, or was it the day before? And so here's one of the videos just showing them at work.
All right, so there is the Indian River Lagoon. That's where Spaceview Park is. Here we are, and there they are with their...
So I just kind of try to give everyone a visual of where the Indian River Lagoon is compared to where they're doing the repairs. And if you look at that area, that is where there are extremely high levels of E. coli. When we first initially over the summer started talking about Scobie Park, which isn't too far from Spaceview Park, we were really initially worried about sewage being in the area. And that's how this all started becoming a conversation. And we brought those concerns forward. And then a FDEP report was submitted, pollution notice was submitted, and then the city did their testing and confirmed our testing. And it's interesting too, right? Because every time Fight for Zero has done testing, it's been backed up by official testing, whether it's the city testing, whether it's FDEP testing. And that's always been a great thing, because I think there needs to be checks and balances. I think it's really important to have independent testing, an organization like ours doing that testing. And so they did their testing. They showed E. coli. There was E. coli it wasn't that high at the time, but it seems to have gotten higher in the Spaceview Park area. So that's been a concern. We also went live a few weeks back in Fight for Zero Boulevard showing the pipe where initially the Spaceview Pond was, and it was kind of blocked off, and we had taken pictures of it, concerned that there was sewage getting out there at that time frame when the 7 million gallon sewage spill happened. So I think that this project that they're doing is a great step in the right direction. I know that a lot of residents in the city of Titusville, and those residents include some of my family members, people that I grew up with, friends. They've been very impatient lately because this has been going on for so long. If you talk to anyone who grew up in the city of Titusville, they'll tell you that sewage has been an ongoing issue for decades. This isn't new. This isn't something that just popped up. It's not something that it's not something that's going to get worse, if that makes any sense, especially with this new pipe going down, and they're working on infrastructure, and that is a step in the right direction. And so I am very pleased with the communication with Cook and the city, and their efforts to not only communicate but to collaborate. It has been so refreshing. It has been a great change, and we're hoping that it stays down that correct direction of collaboration. We've always said we're here as a resource for the community. We could be a resource for elected officials and the local government. But we're also not afraid to hold people to the fire. We're not afraid to call them out. And I think that makes people a little nervous, but sometimes it has to happen in order to get movement and change and solutions enacted immediately. So I'm really happy with that. And I think another thing that we were going to talk about tonight is there was a Florida Department of Environmental Protection investigation today. They went down to tour the Osprey facility. That report is not out today yet, but we will be anticipating that to come out in the following weeks, hopefully. And once we get that, we're hoping to share it with the community, to our pages. That's something that wasn't widely publicized as far as the investigation goes, inspections. And they were supposed to go and look at the Osprey plant. They were going to look at the current projects happening, whether it's Spaceview or Sandpoint. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what they said. Also on Tuesday night, on top of the PFAS, when they also hired an engineering firm to do an investigation on the Spaceview Park area. And you can look at that through their agenda and on their website. So there's a lot going on. There's been a lot of, I can't even imagine what City of Titusville workers you guys are working so hard. And I just can't imagine the amount of stress you may be feeling right now, just working and trying to get this done and get it out of the way. And I hope you guys know how much you're appreciated. I see you guys out there at Sandpoint. I've done a couple of the news interviews at that park in the last few days, and you guys are just working. You're in there working. I didn't even hardly see you take a break. I've just seen you there from like sun up, sun down. And just going. And so I want to thank you guys and recognize, we've always said that the workers are, we're not after what you guys are doing. It's the policies that we are focused on. So you guys have been doing just such an incredible job, and the communication has been so great. And we appreciate all of you that constantly reach out to us and talk to us and message us and encourage us and support everything that we're doing, even though you're the one down there dealing with the sewage. And I do worry about the workers' health sometimes, I'm like, you guys be careful, we'll message, just be careful with what you're breathing in, and just, and we appreciate everything you're doing. So I think that's all I had to say. Keeping updated. If you guys are watching on a different platform, there's a lot of action that happens in Fight for Zero Brevard, where we try to share and we do our live streams, but we also do it on YouTube and our Facebook like page. And we're also streaming this through TikTok, Instagram, and other platforms. So if you're on there, make sure you connect with us. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. I hope that you are planning to go do some fall festivals and just enjoying your time off. It's so important to spend time with family and to get offline and just outdoors and just spending time getting some fresh air. So you guys have a wonderful night.